What's going on, guys? I'm Tyler, and to complete my series of old-fashioned musical reviews leading up to the release of Hamilton, I saved the best for last, and I'm here to let you know that The Sound of Music is no perfect movie, but it really does come pretty damn close on so many different occasions. And I think the majority of you already know the overall story of the movie. Nun in training Maria, played by Julie Andrews, is sent to governess a military family, the Von Trapps, who semi-recently have lost their mother. And when this governess comes into their life and brings them happiness, joy, music, it makes their widowed father, Captain Von Trapp, played by Christopher Plummer, realize how strict and authoritative he's been as a parent and decides to become less strict and more loving towards his children in the midst of their home country, Austria, being overrun by the Nazis in the late 30s. And it goes without saying, I was really looking forward to seeing this movie. I had already established how much I liked Robert Wise as a director with West Side Story. I'd heard so much hype about Julie Andrews, Christopher Plummer, Rodgers and Hammerstein's beautiful music and lyrics, and yeah, you know what? This movie, for the most part, did not disappoint, but the things that were great about it were enough to make it one of the best, most well-made, and most emotional musicals that I've seen possibly in my entire lifetime, because the musical aspect of the movie never overshadows the story or the characters or the performances. Everything about the filmmaking goes hand in hand. Julie Andrews, it goes without saying, was absolutely magnificent. This might actually be my favorite performance of hers because we associate her as being Mary Poppins or the Queen from Princess Diaries. We see her as this motherly mentor figure. But in this movie, she has an arc where she goes from being the student to the teacher, as she starts off as this immature nun who definitely has a great deal of religious faith and wants to bring happiness to the world in the name of God, but she tries so hard to do it on her own terms while thinking that she's following along with the church's orders. And it isn't until the church says to her, you can't force yourself to be committed to God. God has to choose what's best for you and you have to accept it. It's a 50-50 equal hand. And that was what made her seem so especially lovable at the beginning, when she's realizing just how strict and authoritative this household is, and makes absolutely no disguises whatsoever to make it more cheerful and uplifting. In fact, when the father comes home after a long absence and sees how cheerful everything is and instantly despises it just because it reminds him of his dead wife, she holds absolutely nothing back. She makes it very clear what she's trying to do, what she thinks he's doing wrong, and even when he tells her to get lost, she does, but openly expresses her disappointment. She's so strong-willed and independent, and you definitely get the sense that she's maturing over the course of the movie, because in the very opening number with The Sound of Music, she's basically expressing what it is that she brings to this family without ever having met them, without even realizing what her purpose in life is going to be. And then, as she's accepting more responsibility as this motherly figure to the children, you definitely feel the progression of her as a character. You definitely feel her growing without losing her best and worst qualities. And I gotta say, Christopher Plummer really surprised me in this performance, because when I first saw him on screen, I knew he was going to be the Mr. Banks type of father who doesn't see what he's doing as being the wrong way to raise a child, and of course he's going to witness something that will make him seem a lot more free-spirited. But what really surprised me was how soon that arc really kicks in. My favorite scene especially is when he hears his children sing for the first time, walks in on them, and I will not give away what else happens after that because it was just such a beautiful moment. My face was smiling so wide. I haven't smiled this wide since the last time I saw Mary Poppins Returns, oddly enough. And I felt like tearing up because it was just such an emotional sequence, and it was such a revelation for this character, realizing what it is he's doing wrong, but also pointing out that it's not too late for him. So it's the second half of the movie where he's trying to have more optimism and be a much more free-spirited person. It feels a lot more rewarding. Every time he smiles, you smile along with him because you've been despising him the entire time, but you've also been saying, I want to like you, so start showing the things that are great about you as a parent. And Robert Wise, I gotta say, did maybe even a more superior job directing The Sound of Music than he did with West Side Story, because The musical numbers in The Sound of Music rely a lot more on the feelings of the characters and the way the actors sing their songs as opposed to just flashy but still really good choreography. If anything, the shot sizes, the composition of the actors, and the expressions and body language that they're portraying on screen is more than enough to make up for the fact that there really isn't that much choreography in the overall movie. The Sound of Music really is a great opening number because, as I said before, she's explaining through song everything that makes her great about a person, everything she's going to set out to do in this movie without her realizing it. And it's a lot more impactful when you hear the children sing that song for the first time and hear what their father has to say about it. It was just such a rewarding song. And of course, My Favorite Things and Do Re Mi go without saying. They're very cheerful and free-spirited, and I was a little afraid going into this movie seeing the children sing and act in such an over-the-top cheesy fashion, but it actually works in this scenario because, as I said before, they're raised to be strict and authoritative almost in a military fashion, so seeing them goof around or be cheesy, even for a couple seconds, still feels warranted because it just shows the emotional impact that Maria has over the Von Trapp family. And there's so many other songs that I could point out over and over again about what makes them so fantastic. Edelweiss is such a beautiful, simplistic love song that could really just apply not just to Captain Von Trapp and his recently deceased wife, but also to him and his own children. I fucking love this movie. I can keep going on and on about it, but there's so much more stuff I gotta cover, and I'm getting so off track, so I'm actually gonna look on my notes here to remember what other songs I like here. Ah, yes, that's right. How do you solve a problem like Maria? That was not the most essential song because the nuns aren't really in the movie as much, but it's still really funny. It does highlight the fact that even though our hero is best for being so optimistic and outspoken, it does lead her into trouble sometimes. And it's a great acknowledgement how the seemingly perfect protagonist does have flaws that we tend to overlook just because they're entertaining. Something Good was a song that I surprisingly really dug, even though the romance wasn't my favorite aspect of the movie. And I think a lot of that has to do with the presentation. There are a lot of static, long takes of Maria and Captain Von Trapp in near silhouette, but they're still singing, and you can see everything crystal clear. And that was something I really admired about the direction. Robert Weiss's direction, whether it be through dialogue or through musical numbers, are portrayed in the exact same consistent visual style. There are a lot of shots of Maria and Captain Von Trapp with silhouettes masking their entire faces, or there are some shots where they're standing behind fences, gates, or a flight of stairs, and the bars seem like prison bars, which you can obviously say is foreshadowing the events that we're going to get with Nazi Germany occupying Austria, but it's a great example of the themes and messages of this movie about how people feel restricted, and that feeling of restriction is what's making these characters make a lot of really crappy choices. Maria, the more she gets closer to this captain, gets the feeling that they're falling in love and is so afraid of committing and is so afraid that it might go against the will of God and her purpose. And with Captain Von Trapp, it's very simple and obvious. He's so haunted by the death of his wife that he refuses to let anything remind him of her because it'll just bring a lot more personal pain. At least that's how he feels about it. And that's actually what makes the romance between Maria and the captain, Gale is his first name, that's what makes the romance seem so genuine and believable, is because they really are meant for each other. They surprisingly don't feel like they're free and open with the world until they actually meet each other. And even though Maria is a lot more conflicted about the feelings of love with the captain, I feel like Gale is hit especially harder with the romance. He just doesn't show it very often because we don't hear really anything about his dead wife. We never even learn her name. But that's actually what makes him a lot more mysterious of a character when he's being so strict. And then once he comes out of his shell, he's wondering who he loves more, this baroness that he's spent so much time hiding with away from his children, or this one woman who has so many positive aspects that remind him of his wife supposedly that he feels as if she's the one that's really meant for him. The one thing about the romance in this movie that really didn't work for me was this love triangle between Maria, Gail, and this Baroness, whose name escapes me because everyone just calls her Baroness half the time. And there really wasn't that much weight to it for one specific reason. The movie doesn't hide the fact that we know for sure where the story is going. We're just there for the emotional ride. And there wasn't really much of an emotional ride with the love triangle because we already know what the outcome is going to be. Even in the 60s, a romance triangle like this was already so obvious. And for whatever reason, it's drawn out so much, especially towards the second half of the movie, where the first act was all about Christopher Plummer coming out of his shell and being a good father. The second act is Maria faced with the fears of having a life outside of the one she already knows, and that's why, even though she runs away, she's forced to come back and confront it by the nuns, who obviously want to have more women in their worship, but at the same time respect the fact that they can't decide these things. In their mind, it's God who decides it, and they feel that they're doing God's will. And the religious aspects of this movie actually really surprised me for that reason. But getting back onto the love triangle, it really didn't have any stakes or suspense because even back then, people already knew what was going to happen, and it really didn't work. And I thought the Nazi plotline in the third act, where now that I don't really think I'm giving anything away here, Maria and the Captain von Trapp and the rest of the family are trying to escape Nazi Germany, felt a little random and forced at first, and I thought it was kind of Oscar baity in regards to the drama and suspense, but then it really hit me. The first act was the two of them not really realizing they were meant for each other. The second act was them realizing that they are. And in the third act, now that they are, they have to face so many more dangers in life, but they're doing it together, and they're doing it as a family. Plus, the Nazi parallels in the way that they authoritate each other through these whistling commands really did remind me of the beginning of the movie where Captain Von Trapp actually commands his own children with whistles. It's a very strange parallel of how he's becoming less of a dictator in his own personal life, that once he sees dictatorship being around him in the rest of the world, it makes him sick. It reminds him of his past mistakes. And all of a sudden, what seemed like a forced plotline made for the sake of delivering an intense final act actually felt warranted and really added to the drama and suspense and everything that these characters have learned over the course of this movie. And I don't really know what else to say about this movie. The Sound of Music has excellent music and singing, well-performed actors, fantastic direction. This might be Robert Wise at his best. The cinematography makes Austria look massive and beautiful in scope. So many helicopter shots of the hills being so alive. I had to shove that in there. I'm sorry. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm not sure if this was filmed on 70mm, but I hope it is, because everything looks so bright and colorful. Everything looks unbelievably huge and out of this world, and the period piece setting really blended in so seamlessly, and I'm just running out of things to talk about with how great The Sound of Music is. So for all those reasons, it's probably not going to surprise anyone. I'm going to give The Sound of Music a 4.5 out of 5. Guys, thanks as always for watching. If you have seen The Sound of Music, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Let me know what your favorite old-fashioned musical is, or just favorite musical in general. Be sure to let me know in the comments below. Be sure to stay tuned for more classic movie reviews, more cooking reviews, and my upcoming review of Hamilton on Disney+. Look forward to that on Saturday. And be sure to like and subscribe. Take care.